Hello, and welcome to the IT Pro TV webinar series, live from the IT Pro TV studios. Today, we're talking all things cybersecurity with Edutainer Daniel Lowrie and cyber mentor Heath Adams. Heath is a hacker by trade. He has a strong interest in ethical hacking, penetration testing, vulnerability analysis, and network security. He's also a gamer in his spare time. He's the CEO of TCM Security and runs the popular YouTube channel, The Cyber Mentor. Daniel is one of our IT Pro TV edutainers, specializing in cybersecurity topics. He's a red teamer who teaches courses like CompTIA Pen Test Plus and CEH V11 for the platform. Hello, and welcome to the show. We want you to chime in on our chats today. Ask questions, send in your comments, and just help us guide the conversation. One lucky participant will get some cool IT Pro TV swag. So if you're watching on GoToWebinar, LinkedIn, YouTube, or the IT Pro TV live stream, just put your questions in the chat and we'll answer them along the way. Well, all right, Daniel, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you and Heath.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you, good folks out there, for joining us today, because it's a real special treat, at least for me, because I've really enjoyed one Mr. Heath Adams' work, and he is here with us today. So I am super excited. Hopefully you're super excited, because we're going to answer some questions, have a little fun maybe, and help you good folks out there understand the things that have been puzzling the old brain when it comes to cybersecurity, maybe just have some good old-fashioned conversation about things we're really, really interested in. With that said, let's go ahead and bring Heath in on the conversation. Heath, welcome to the show. Oh my goodness, he's huge. Look at the size of his voice.
Look at me there.
My
That's
goodness,
pretty cool.
Do you see yourself?
I can see myself. That's pretty
Is
neat.
it awesome to see yourself that huge?
I am jealous of your production quality that you got going on here.
Well, you know, a few $100,000 and you're right there. Right, so
No big deal.
You're good to go. You're good to go. Well, we got a lot of questions to get to today, I'm sure. But I do like to kind of kick things off from time to time, because honestly, I've got you in front of me. I've got some questions for you. And it's one question I like to ask anybody who's been in the field, kind of does this, not kind of does this, that does do this, and has that experience. And I think it's helpful for those that are out there that are watching and probably trying to get into it or have started getting into cybersecurity, and they kind of, you know, that imposter syndrome starts creeping up on them and making them feel like they're never going to get to the end of this thing and it's just never going to happen. Let me ask you this. It's kind of a two-part question, because I feel like I know the first part's a little rhetorical. And the question is, are you satisfied with your current level of skill? And if not, what are you doing to remedy that?
Yeah, never, I think is the correct answer. But I feel like, you know, you can always get better at something. There's always room to improve. And when you're working in the field of cybersecurity, you have to stay on top of your game. That's what I tell a lot of people that are interested, especially getting into ethical hacking, is that it changes, the landscape changes so often. There's always new exploits, new attacks, new defenses that you have to be aware of and staying on top of. So, you know, at a bare minimum, it is one of those things that you have to at least make sure that you are keeping up to date with news and articles and the latest and greatest of what's going on out there. But outside of that, honestly, it's just making sure that you're maintaining an education that satisfies you as well. So once you get to a certain level, I think that you can start focusing on things where you might want to niche into, or different categories and specializations. And you know, as you move up, I think that becomes more of the training skill set that you can develop. But you should always be trying to learn something and improve. And it's completely natural to have imposter syndrome and feel like you're not good enough. It's just, I think, how you channel that energy and motivate yourself to learn.
I love that answer, by the way, where don't let imposter syndrome be the stumbling block from you continuing to move forward. Let it be the gas that fuels the engine. Like,
Exactly.
Oh, I do not feel like I have enough skill. Let me get more. Let me go faster, stronger, better. And that way, you know, I will feel more like that. And I find myself doing that kind of ebb and flow where I'm like, I got this. I do this. I know this stuff. And then, you know, you read an article or something, or somebody does something really cool, and you're like, I am lame. I know nothing. I am a horrible person. I don't know. It's a facade, and you know, well, hide your face from everyone. So I like that idea, and I think that's right. Like, I do the exact same thing as far as I try to follow some news feeds and blogs and just watching different like YouTube videos and conferences and all sorts of different stuff. And all of a sudden you'll hear something you've never heard before, and you go, oh, that's interesting. What is that thing? And then I let that kind of be the impetus to drive me to going, I want to pull back the layers of this onion and see what this is all about, because that seemed really neat and relevant to my career. And even if it's not, I learned something cool and I can have conversations with other folks in the business about it. So love your answer. I think that's exactly right. But that said, we actually have our first question from the chat room. So let's take it away. What do we have?
We have cybersecurity, and I'm motivated to start, but I usually hit a wall when practicing my skills, and I give up for months at a time. So what are some of the ways I can overcome those learning roadblocks that happen and that hurt my motivation?
Oh, wow. So feeling stymied, feeling this is really hard. And yes, it absolutely is. But Heath, I want you to field this one first. I want to hear your take on this.
Sure. I think a lot of learning and education is about building a snowball and learning in small chunks. And as that snowball rolls downhill and you build momentum, it becomes a lot easier. So for me, a great example that I like to give is when I first started out learning hacking. One of the big things that everybody harps on that you need to learn is exploit development and buffer overflows. And it was one of those things that when I got to that section of learning, I told myself hey, I don't think I'm ready for this, and that it's okay to not be ready for this. If I had moved forward with trying to learn something that really was demotivating, for me, I think that it could have maybe halted my progress. So what I did was I went and continued on past that and just started learning other things that I felt were enough to keep me going and to keep my interest in hacking. And then I went back when I felt like I had a lot of motivation behind me and said, I'm going to knock this out and I'm going to make sure I learn this. And beyond that, I released videos on buffer overflows because I thought that helped me understand it better. If I could explain it to somebody who's maybe a 5-year-old and get them to understand it, then I can understand it myself. So you have to take those challenges and again, motivate yourself to do it, but it's okay to skip over some things. There's certain foundational skills and skill sets. A lot of people want to jump right into cybersecurity without learning how to build a computer and learning some of the basic building blocks of IT. You can't skip over those, but you can skip over certain parts of those building blocks and go back to them as long as you're still within that same foundational group.
Wow, great answer. I like how you're there's no law that says you have to learn this in this order. You do have some things that you probably need to learn to set your foundations, but if this is causing you a lot of consternation, it's just not quite in your wheelhouse quite yet, move on to something that is. And I find myself doing that a lot. I follow a lot of rabbit trails and always kind of have some irons in the fire, as it were. And if this one gets a little too hot for me, I kind of jump over here. Hey, let me learn a little bit about that, and then I'll come back to this. Because you'll probably pick up a lot of context in those other things, and it does kind of keep you motivated, right? It's fuel for that fire of saying, this is interesting. If you're losing interest because it's so difficult or you have no concept or, it's kind of above, a little too beyond your reaching fast, then it will make you walk away from things. But if you just kind of pivot over to something that's tertiary but still related, it keeps that interest going and it's going to keep you motivated to then come back. Hey, I know a lot more than I did when I first tried this. Let me have another go at this. And you'll probably find yourself going, oh, I know this concept, I know that concept. Things are making a little more sense. This isn't as difficult as it was before because I've grown in my knowledge and my understanding. So I think that is phenomenal, and I give the exact same advice. That said, Sophia, what do we got when it comes from the chat room?
We've got a question from Robin. There's a question about companies operating with no brick and mortar footprint, no infrastructure hardware, all staff working remotely, all apps are software as a service. Will you provide an overview of security best practices? Yeah.
Well, how much time you got? Heath, good luck.
Yeah, I feel like I should charge for this.
It's a consultation.
So we actually operate fully remote. So there's a lot of things that I think you need to have in place in terms of policies, starting off good password policies. Make sure that you have those in place, not just for your software as a service, but anything that you're using, period. Make sure that you're enforcing good password policies. Make sure you're enforcing multi-factor authentication, and you are using password managers. We have a password manager as an organization that certain teams have access to. So we're not reusing passwords, and we're making sure that we're all security minded. And it's a little bit easier, I think, as a security organization where everybody's security minded. But even the same advice would be for an organization that's just starting out and working completely remote is make sure that you got strong passwords, make sure you're doing multi-factor authentication, make sure you're not putting anything in the cloud or anywhere that you don't want accessible by other people. So you always have to assume breach, and you need to make sure that You're doing role-based access control as well. Like not everybody in our organization has access to all the sensitive stuff. Only need to know basis or based on their role do they get that. So a few little policies can go a very long way with having an organization that's completely remote.
Any standardized frameworks or standards that are out there like NIST or something that you would throw somebody and say, hey, this is a pretty good guide to follow? Is that something you do, or do you actually kind of usually tailor make it?
We usually follow NIST, or the CIS top 20 is a good place to start as well.
Gotcha. Well, there you go. A quick and easy answer for a very difficult question, but a good one nonetheless. Follow those standards and frameworks. Just go down the path that people have beaten before. Stand on the shoulders of giants so that you can see more far than they did, right? All right, Sophia, I know you got more questions for us. What do you got?
Yes, we do. We're actually getting a lot more now.
Starting to roll in.
They are. They're starting to roll in. We have the one that says, I'm studying network architecture and engineering. Are security certifications like CompTIA Security Plus and Pentest Plus and other certs worth getting in my field?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I like this question because obviously it comes from I'm not really sure, I don't have that experience in that world. I know what I would say, but I like to always defer to our guests out there and get your hot take on this. Heath, what do you say?
Sure. I say yes. I've worn both hats. So I was a network engineer prior to being a security person. And if you add some of the security concepts to your toolkit, I think that makes you a better network engineer. Makes you think like an attacker and think, even though if you don't have to necessarily be a hacker to understand the attacks that are going on and say, well, maybe I should look into our network configs and make sure that we're not allowing this, or that you go and you take a security mind to it, an offensive mind, and apply defensive concepts to it. So I don't think learning the offensive side of things, even as a network engineer, would be harmful whatsoever. I think it would just add robustness to your toolkit.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of go down this road a lot in my own thought process, and when I'm trying to give people advice for getting into any IT, is you can specialize, obviously, just like this person is going to school for networking. They want to have that networking background. That's what they're going to end up doing. Awesome. Or maybe that is what they are doing currently. But having knowledge in the other areas of IT, I'm not saying you got to be the best at them, but having those knowledge bases, like what you just said, it really adds to the benefit of what it is that you're doing, because now it's not just, because I did that, right? I pigeonholed myself and I was like, I'm a systems and network guy, and that's what I do. I'm not a security person. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a DBA. I'm not a web developer. I don't work in the web. So what do I need to know about that stuff for? And all of a sudden, when you get knee deep into things, you start realizing how useful having some knowledge in all of those areas are and apply to the one that you're specializing in. So it's always a good idea to learn what you can about the other areas of IT so that you can apply them in your field of scope. So I agree. Good job. That's it. Moving back to Miss Sophia, what do we have?
We get a couple people that have asked a similar question, which I think is one that probably you get a lot. If someone were just getting into cybersecurity, where would you recommend that they start?
If someone were just getting into cybersecurity, where would they start? Well, you go to itpro.tv, right? You sign up with promo code. No. Well, I mean, it is a good place to start. But you sell training as well, Heath. That's a great question for someone who's just like, I think before I throw this to you, would you say that someone who is new to IT should start going down the cybersecurity track, or should they learn IT first and then now you're new to cybersecurity? Once you have those kind of like foundational knowledges, where do you start from there? Do you want to kind of answer in both ways?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's a little vague on that end. So if you're just getting started in IT, I think there's core foundational skills that you need. Usually what I tell people is it's A+ level skills. So troubleshooting computer issues and building and understanding computer hardware. I think network plus level skills as well. So understanding networking, different ports, IP addresses, the OSI model, understanding that at its core, and then getting into some of the security concepts. But also, if you're working in cybersecurity, good chance you're going to work with Linux. Good chance you're probably going to do some sort of programming or some sort of scripting at least. So like understanding Bash or Python could really be useful, and getting that core foundational skill before you even consider moving into the cybersecurity space. And then once you start moving into cybersecurity, I mean, there's a ton of different vendors and trainers out there. IT Pro TV, we've got ethical hacking training. It depends on what you're trying to do. TryHackMe is really great for ethical hacking and other security services. There's a lot of resources out there. There's YouTube channels. There's plenty of places out there. So without specifically knowing where in cybersecurity you're trying to get, it's hard to give you a direct path, but you want to build your foundations. You want to make sure that just like a house, you build upon a strong foundation and then you start learning cybersecurity stuff.
Yeah, I have a very similar answer. And I do like to kind of like, anytime someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I don't know where to begin. I know I like cybersecurity. I think it looks awesome, a really interesting type of career path, and I'd love to go down that. Where do I begin? And it's like, oh, well, first, where are you? Like, where are you at this point in time? Do you have IT skills at all? If not, we have to have that conversation. If you do, then kind of like to your point, Heath, that's there are a couple of roads in which you could go down at this point in time. Cybersecurity is kind of an umbrella term for different avenues of cybersecurity. You have the defensive cybersecurity, you have offensive cybersecurity, you have threat hunting and that kind of stuff. People that work in GRC. There's a lot of different ways in which you could go down the cybersecurity road. Now we got to figure that out. What is it that kind of twirls your beanie, as it were? Do you like, thinking I'm going to build a bank vault? This is going to be Fort Knox when it comes to security around this network. If that's what makes you excited at the end of the day, okay, well, let's start talking about what are good cybersecurity practices for sanitization and firewalling and using logs and alerts and keeping all that stuff safe. How do you do that? What does end user security look like? Now we can start having that conversation of this is where it would be a good place to start. So you got to figure out where do you want to go, and from there, the road starts to become a little more clear. So once you get that figured out, should be able to help you. All right, Sophia, I know that chat room's lighting up, so what do we got?
It is. We've got a question here that's addressed specifically to Heath, so we got a question specifically for you, Heath. Some people who are pursuing cybersecurity live in countries where there aren't a lot of opportunities for jobs in cyber. So is it possible for them to grab opportunities in areas like the USA, the European Union, or is it difficult to get a remote or on-site work visa for cybersecurity jobs? That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I mean, just coming from the outside in, and especially depending on, you're dealing with security and you're an outsider, right? This is probably not an easy, there's going to be some consternation from a hiring manager thinking, okay, well, I have not just an external, third party, like a contractor, but they're in a different country. And maybe there's probably laws about hiring external people from different countries and having them work remotely. Heath, do you run into this a bit?
Yeah, so I can help answer that a little bit. So I don't know specifically about the US. I do know a little bit about the European Union. And I imagine the US is similar in the sense that in order to be an outsider and get a job within that sort of space, you have to fill a job where they can't hire or source locally. So within that country or within the European Union or within the United States, there is a job shortage right now in terms of ethical hacking and cybersecurity. We need more people than there's more jobs than we have people for right now. So it's one of those things where if you could say like, yes, here is my background and I am established and I have some level of cybersecurity expertise, I think then you have the ability to come in and say, yeah, you might have a chance. It's going to be an uphill battle, but you might have a chance of getting a job with an employer. A route that I see a lot of people take, though, is working for a larger company that has presence in the country you want to work in and in your country. Example of this would be like a big four accounting firm like a Deloitte or KPMG. They have cybersecurity divisions. You could work at your country first and then request a transfer to the country of choice and try that route as well. So once you're established with a company that has presence in both locations, that could work for you as well.
I like how Heath is hacking the job market. Like, how can I work my way around not being able to do this? I want to circumvent those. I'll go through the side door. And then from there, I should be able to access the front door. Perfect. Like the total hacker mindset of just, how do I circumvent this system so that it works to my benefit? It's a great way to go. I've never had to deal with any of that kind of stuff. I've always been just a US-based US worker, and I don't own my own company to hire and things of that nature. I have kind of seen this pop up from time to time, so it's a really interesting question. So if you get good folks out in the chat room have some information about that, feel free to pop that in the chat and help these people out. This is a community, and we want you to be a part of this conversation. So by all means, if you know something about that, help somebody out. All right, Sophia, what do you got for us? I know you got a question.
I do. I've got a question. I believe this is coming to us from the YouTube chat. It says, with so much information out there, How do I know I'm learning the correct information to get a job in the cybersecurity field?
How do I know I'm learning? That's an interesting question.
It is.
How do I know I'm learning the correct information? Well, here's where I would start. I'll start looking at certifications, right? Certifications are meant to do what? They're meant to prove a set of skills for a specific industry. So if you're looking to do the cybersecurity thing, start looking at cybersecurity certifications and then check out those objective lists, right? Look at the domains they're going to cover and the topics they're going to go over and see, am I learning these things? It's kind of a bit of a blueprint out there for you to pick up, oh, this is the right stuff. I can stop learning about basket weaving and I'm on the right track over here with, Seams or, Splunk or whatever the case is, right? So that's where I like to kind of go and use that because they're a good litmus test on at least some real idea of what people are looking for out in the field. Part two of that would be go check out job listings. Go to Dice, go to Indeed, go to Monster, whatever. Start looking at the jobs you want to be a part of or do and see what are the qualifications. Use that as a blueprint to say, hey, I need to learn, because it says I need to have proficiency with one or more of these scripting languages, Bash, Python, PowerShell. Well, I should probably start learning Bash, Python, and PowerShell so that I can fulfill this type of job role. Heath, am I on the right track here or am I way off the mark and I should go hide myself in a closet somewhere?
No, I think those sound great. I have a different interpretation of the question, I think, but so I think it's about due diligence as well. So doing research on, like you're mentioning, like job postings, other places, I would say go on places like Reddit and don't just look at one subreddit because subreddits within themselves can be biased, but like try to get a general consensus as a whole and look at it from like the past year. See what people are talking about in the last year. Don't look from 5 years ago because that advice may have changed. Look at what's going on last year. What are people talking about? What courses, what content? Start there, and also do your due diligence on the people that you're getting your training from. Without saying much, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen looking at the cybersecurity field and saying, oh, dollar signs, without the background or the work experience or anything to back that up. So you need to make sure that if you see somebody teaching a course, go look the person up. Google's gonna be your best friend in IT and cybersecurity anyway. So do some research and due diligence, make sure that the person has worked in the field or has the certifications necessary to say, hey, I'm teaching you and I know what I'm doing. So I'd say just make sure that you're doing your research and you're putting together the best path and the training, and even then making sure that you're doing research on the people that are giving you that training as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea because you're right. Unfortunately, well, there's a lot of people out there just looking to grift and make money off of an opportunity of people that want to do something, and they're going to prey upon that desperation to get into it because I've seen it. It's palpable, the desperation of people. I want to do this so bad. And then, of course, someone comes along to make their wildest dreams come true. You just have to pay for my boot camp for $2,500 or whatever the case is. And they don't really know what the heck they're talking about. And they do these things. So great advice to make sure that anybody you take training from, has a long and luxurious history as a good trainer, and someone knows what they're talking about. They have a good reputation in the community as someone who can give you the right stuff. So great advice. I like that a lot. Thanks a lot, Heath. I'm going to take that my own self. All right, that said, Sophia, what you got there for us?
This next one, I think you guys might have been talking about this a little the other day. It says, does PNPT provide the technical skills to start as a freelancer without any previous professional experience in pen testing?
Well, that's a great question. Heath, I think you're probably the most qualified of any of us in this room to answer that question.
I would say no. And the reason why is not that the training isn't there. It's that I wholeheartedly believe that you should work in the field before going and freelancing. I think that there's a lot of nuances that you won't pick up on. And also you're working for somebody else. So you allow them to take the risk and have the insurance and carry all that other stuff. While you're learning some of the tricks of the trade, there's a lot of things and nuances that you won't pick up until you get experience, and you don't want to do your client or potential clients a disservice by going and freelancing and missing something. And that's something that can be incredibly detrimental. It can be $1 million+ mistake. So I would say go get some work experience, at least a year, understand, how the process works, and then start freelancing. It's not so much a training thing. You can have all the training and certifications in the world. It's making sure that you have the right experience and that you are doing right by your customer at the end of the day.
And Heath, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of legal aspects to performing penetration tests as well that a lot of people don't really think about. It's like, oh yeah, it looks fun to go do. All of a sudden you're on the hook for something you've done and it's illegal because you didn't know, or you didn't have the contract worked out just right. You didn't get a lawyer. You just kind of like did a handshake deal and now all of a sudden you're in jail. And that's what we want to avoid, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of freelancing and a lot of owning a company is dealing with lawyers on the other side, and making sure that your contracts are in place and making sure that you have all your ducks in a row, all the right insurance, everything that you need to be safe, because it's a matter of time, before something happens, and you need to make sure that you're covered if something does happen.
Have you done any kind of like pro bono work before? And does that also take all those bells and whistles, the legal stuff that goes along with that? If you were to do something like a nonprofit needs a pen test, and you're like, no problem, I'll pen test that for you. You still have to fill out all that kind of paperwork for doing that type of work as well?
Yeah, you do, because there's still legal liability. Even though it's free, you still have to make sure that you have the liability in place, and that a lot of what the basic gist of what the client signs off on is saying, hey, this is simulating a hack, essentially. So there could be a situation where we take down a device on your network. We don't know what's going to happen. So you need to understand that these things can happen, and we're going to do our best to help you out. But also there could be negative side effects to having a hacker in your network. So there's a lot of risks that is in play, and we need to make sure that our liability is covered from our standpoint. So that way, if we do go in there, especially if we're doing it for free, that they understand the risk and what we're getting into as well.
Yeah, my favorite is when I hear the horror stories of, we hired pen testers and they found some vulnerabilities, and we, mitigated those vulnerabilities. And the next week later, we got hacked by some exploit or vulnerability that they did not find. And I'm suing them because I paid for, and it's like, you got to understand, this is a slice in time. When we do a penetration test, it doesn't mean that you are completely without flaw. It just means this is what we found. And a lot of times they will come at you with litigation, and you got to have to kind of put that stuff in your contracts, right?
Yeah, a lot of our wording in our contracts say hey, this is a time limited engagement. We're going to do as best as we can for you in this amount of time, but a hacker has unlimited amounts of time. So we're not going to, there's no way in 2 days or 3 days worth of an engagement that we're going to find everything that a person who had unlimited amounts of time can find. So that is a risk that also has to be accepted and signed off on before we get started.
All right. I think we beat the legal horse well enough. Let's move on to our next question. Sophia, what do we got?
This question is about somebody that has some certifications already. They have the Security Plus and AWS Cloud Practitioner certifications, and they're wondering what other certifications or trainings can they take to break into cybersecurity?
Well, how much time you got? Because there's a list of definite plenty of stuff out there that they could get into cybersecurity. Again, kind of going back to the idea of what avenue do you want to take in cybersecurity? But let's for the sake of an argument, say they're looking at kind of some sort of offensive security thing. Heath, where would you begin?
Yeah, so I think having the Security Plus would then assume a foundation of at least A+, Net+. It could be a wrong assumption, but having a cloud there as well is pretty good. And then I would say starting in, once you have those foundational skills, you can start into the ethical hacking type training if you're looking to get an offensive security. So that could be PMPT, that could be OSCP. Make sure that you're looking at certifications that are, we're talking ethical hacking, that are hands-on and allow you to demonstrate your skills from a hands-on aspect, as opposed to doing a multiple choice test where it doesn't really, just could be a memorization dump in that sense. So once you get your baseline skills in cybersecurity or in ethical hacking, then you can start branching into more niche areas if you wanted to, in certain areas, depending on what you wanted to do. But even when you get into the field, just of the question's so broad, when you get into cybersecurity, there's a million different places you can go. And then even when you get into ethical hacking, there's a million places you can go. There's network hacking, web hacking, physical hacking, IoT, SCADA. car hacking, airplane hacking. So you could specialize in a bunch of different areas as well. So hopefully that answers the question. It was a little vague though.
Yeah, I think with the foundational skills they already have with Security Plus and AWS kind of going down that road, cloud is the thing, right? So maybe go get some of those AWS security certifications and then move into some sort of DevSecOps with cloud, all that. You would definitely have a very good time finding a plethora of employment and opportunities using just those types of skills, because that is definitely a niche that needs to be filled and is in dire need of strong workers that know what they're doing and that stuff. So I would kind of push you to go that way, because most people are kind of doing what Heath and I are probably trying to teach you to do, which is standard ethical hacking, move into penetration testing, then start to find a niche in that with web app pen testing or IoT or whatever the case is. So that's kind of the bread and butter of that side of the hacking world. But if you wanted to go that cloud road, that would be an excellent way to go, at least in my experience. All right, that said, I know that Sophia is chomping at the bit. She's like looking at me like, I got a question, question time. So go ahead. Yes, what is it?
Well, the previous question that we had did mention AWS Cloud Practitioner. So I did want to mention really quick that we did do a course on Intro to AWS pen testing.
We
so
did.
that's a good certification.
Nice shameless plug.
Yeah, might as well plug it while we can.
Yeah.
And we also had somebody, I believe in our office, Lauren Deal, that recently got her AWS
She
Certified
did.
Cloud Practitioner certification. So it's definitely a good one to get, just like that person mentioned. So those are a couple of certifications and courses that you might want to keep in mind.
Awesome.
From somebody that's not an expert, just saying. But yes, okay, we do have more questions. So the next question says, does a hacker target the backups? What should we do in order to secure, I'm so sorry, what should we do in order to secure backups? Can you explain to me what that means?
So when they're talking about backups, they mean like you have data in your organization, information that is about your organization. Some of it is probably like, who cares? It's just information about X, Y, or Z. But then there's some of it's going to be extremely sensitive, maybe R&D, financial, the list goes on, right? How do I keep that secure? Well, we typically make a backup because there's just standard things that can happen, like data corruption. Something bad happens in the machine, and now all that data is gone. Well, if you don't have a backup of it, then all that data is gone, right? So we have standard practices when it comes to backups, which is A, take backups, do them in regular intervals, do them in a specific way depending on your environments. And then there comes the security around that. So I would absolutely say yes, hackers will target your backups because they know that that is a great place for you to be able to just kind of throw the, oh, well, we got hacked thing and just revert to backups. Heath, what are you seeing in the world out there in your day-to-day when it comes to the backups? A, how well are companies engaging in doing secure backups and keeping them secure? And B, how often are hackers going after them?
Yeah, it depends on what we come across during the engagement. I have seen backups in an open file share before, but ideally you're encrypting your backups and they're not just sitting there willy-nilly on the network. So
you don't just put the backup right on the same drive you're backing up.
I mean, if you want to live dangerously, you can.
That's a good way to go right there.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I think you covered it pretty well. Just making sure that you're encrypting your backups and that you're taking backups, especially with all the ransomware that we're seeing lately. So I think that's pretty spot on.
I did backups for a while. It was kind of like part of my job role when I was a sysadmin, was like, those backups are golden. You must make sure they are happening, right? And we were doing encryption. It was all like LT tapes, right? And some of it was going to Iron Mountain. We had Iron Mountain offsite. I had another offsite facility. We had like replication with deep duplication, like the whole 9 yards, like every possible way we could back up that data. Of course, I worked for a large insurance company, and that was a really important thing, that that data did not get corrupted or ransomware, crypto locked. That would be bad. So it was really important that if the main place we store data went bye-bye, we're good to go. You could blow up the building and we would never lose a ping on our website, right? Everything would continue to work. Agents could continue to do their thing. Backups are good. We like backups. So hopefully that answers your question out there. All right, Sophia, that moves us on. I'm sure you got another question for us.
Yes, I do. This question says, can you please provide a roadmap of pen testing?
Ooh.
So where would you like to begin with that?
There is the PS, what is it? The pen testing, like it's like a framework that's out there. It's escaping me. I'm horrible with acronyms. Heath, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but there are some standard pen testing frameworks out there, and you probably come up with your own as well. Do you have a custom one that you use, like your methodology, or do you rely on a standard?
So was the question on frameworks, or was it on?
It says, can you please provide a roadmap of pen testing? Like, what does that look like? How do you do a pen test?
Yeah. So that's a good question. It's a little bit loaded. So we have frameworks that we follow. Usually it's NIST. And what we'll do, or if we're doing like a web app pen test, we'll have an OWASP framework. But what we do is we have Excel sheets that have like checklists. Essentially, it says like, step one is this, like verify or make sure the ROE is signed, the rules of engagement are signed, then verify the scope, and then perform vulnerability scanning. And you just go down that list to make sure that you're checking all your boxes and you've done your due diligence for the client and made sure you've done everything that you needed to do. If you external versus internal pen test on the network side, the list gets bigger. When you start to get into the web app side of things, the checklist is incredibly long. So we do follow the frameworks and the guidelines that are there for us. And then we do have some customized frameworks as well, depending on the situations that we run into. And, it just depends on you can't just take one framework and say, we're going to apply this to all clients. So it does have to be customized occasionally.
Yeah, I would assume if you were doing something like a healthcare provider, or if it was a PCI compliance test, that's going to kind of modify how you operate and what you're looking for and the things you're going to do, just because they're different types of organizations and they have different types of requirements for when it comes to performing these penetration tests. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So there you go. I don't know who asked that question. I didn't catch the name, but it's a good question. It's a little too broad to be able to answer easily because there's just so much nuance to each organization and how they do things and what you're going to do depending on what they're having you test. So the answer is going to be, it might be this, it might be that, this depends, right? I love those answers, they're fun. All right, Sophia, I'm sure you got more questions we can answer with depends, but
yes,
what do you got for us?
We've got a question from Ike that says, what if you have the CompTIA trifecta and you only have help desk titles with some sysadmin work? How can that be used to break out of help desk hell?
You only have help desk titles with some sysadmin work. How can that be used to break out of help desk hell? Did you ever work on a help desk, Heath?
I did.
Yeah, I did as well.
Yeah.
I did as well. How did you jump out of that role and into something a little more exciting?
So I did the triad actually. I think I had the Linux Plus and maybe the CEH after that. But basically, I started applying for what I thought was the next step for me, and that was network engineering. So that kind of kicked off my networking career. I took some of the security plus knowledge and some of the net plus knowledge and used that to go out and interview for, entry-level positions in the network side of things where they expect you to have some experience in IT, but maybe not necessarily having experience in the networking side of things. So it's just like getting your first help desk job. You're not going to have the experience that you're hoping to have until you actually get the on-the-job experience. So I think I would start applying for jobs. I think with the triad like that, you could at least get a junior network position and take your next step up. Or if you're looking to get into cybersecurity, like a SOC analyst, entry-level SOC analyst type role, I think those certifications will qualify for that as well. So you just take your experience plus your certifications, start applying to the next step up on the entry level, and just go from there. And the worst thing that can happen when you apply for jobs is that they say no. So put a bunch of applications in where you think you see fit.
Yeah, it can feel a little daunting to like, do I have the right skills to be able to just kind of like move into that next tier of a role? You don't know. Just try, right? Try to get that job. I became the person that was like, I volunteered for everything. If it was above my pay grade, I wanted to be a part of it. I just was like, hey, is there anything I can do to help you guys? I'll run cables. I'll do anything that's the work you just don't want to do so that I can be a part of it and be near it. And then I became someone that was helpful, not just in a help desk capacity, but for the people that had job roles that were above mine. And then they were like, well, Daniel's super helpful. And then when a space opened up for another junior admin, they were like, well, that's an easy fit. Just promote Daniel into that. I was like, cool, right? And then I kept doing the same thing. I'm like, give me more responsibility, give me more responsibility. So they kept giving me more responsibility. And then one day they were like, hey, we're going to promote you to a senior. Cool, right? And then one day it's like, hey, I want to learn about cybersecurity. And they knew that like, just give him whatever, just give him rope and get out of his way, and he'll make it happen. He'll do anything he can to be helpful and promote and do things for us, be a helpful person. And that was right there. And just talking to people, making friends with people that like could help me move up was key to helping me move up. So hopefully that helps you out as well. Don't be afraid to go after those things, and don't be afraid to volunteer to help with stuff that's a little outside of your pay grade. Doesn't matter. People are always glad to have another set of helping hands, as long as you're not, completely incompetent. And you're, oh, I just poured coffee on the server. Oh no, they don't like that. So, but if you're a normal person and you can work in there, just go for it. Right? That's my advice. All right, Sophia, I can see by that look in your eye.
You can tell. I'm
You've
excited.
got a question.
I do.
I've seen it before.
My poker face is awful.
Yeah,
What can I say?
Good.
This question says, do you recommend using systems like Kali Linux that already have apps for hacking, or the other systems that don't? Or is it just based on personal experience?
Ooh, man, we're getting great questions today. Heath, do you roll your own, or do you just go with an off the shelf?
It's an off the shelf, but we have scripts that we run that installs the tools and everything that we want. But it's a nice like base customization or base installation, and then we just customize. It depends on the situation. I've started actually using Windows for a lot of pen testing because there's a lot of tools that port over, but still Linux is the way to go for pen testing. But it really, at the end of the day, depends on what you want your framework and your tool set to look like. I just like having the ability to have a known repository and a known working system without having to deal with any headaches of trying to install tools and go down that route. So
if you download and let me give you a couple more questions, because I want to pick your brain on this a little bit, because this seems to be a bit of a hot topic. Kali, Parrot, or some other hacking-based system do you go with? Which one?
Yeah, I'm a Kali guy. I think Parrot came out. Parrot was pretty, but Parrot's the system. My hardware never worked with it. It seemed like anytime I was trying to download from the repos, the speeds were very slow. My CPU usage was like running at like 99%. So like I never had a great experience with Parrot, but Kali's always worked smoothly. The repos download smoothly. You have to look out for nuances with updates, and it breaks tools, but I think that's any distribution, honestly.
Yeah, that's always fun. Now, what if you do download that fresh Kali, what are we at? It's quarter 3 yet? So you got that 2022.3 hot off the press. What's the first tool that you have to download that you're going for that you know is not a part of that base?
Yeah. Shout out to DeWalt, who actually works for us at TCM Security. He wrote a tool called Pimp My Kali. And basically it allows you to customize your Kali and does, it's basically like a working repository. Anytime they update something and it breaks, he goes in and updates his tool to fix any breaks that are currently happening until those get fixed. So it's basically anytime we do a new install at work, we'll go and we'll run that, and we'll make sure that these are good to go. We're not going to have any issues with anything that we run, and we're good to ship this to a client or use in production.
Man, I'm so glad I asked you that question, because I believe you just changed my life, and probably the lives of everybody that's watching. Pimp My Kali. I'm totally downloading that tonight. So thank you, sir, on that one. So there you go. It's kind of a personal thing a lot of times. It just comes down to what you like, what you don't like, what's been working for you. And then sometimes you can just kind of push it and make it the thing you want it to be. I got really comfortable just using Kali, and I don't want to have to go searching for stuff. I know where it is in Kali. I've used Parrot extensively. It's fine. It's great. It's just, I'm like, user share. Nope, it's not there. It's not there. Somewhere else. So that's my personal preference. All right, Sophia, what else do we got on the press?
This one comes from Patient. It says, I came across Heath's The Cyber Mentor videos on YouTube, and I fell in love with pen testing. I started getting to know others like Daniel Lowrie and John Hammond, but after finishing the PNPT and attempting the exam, I failed just at the very first step of external pen test. 5 days trying to crack the external pen test, the TCM team told me my OSINT was correct. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong.
OSINT.
But I needed OSINT. Okay, see, I'm learning something. They told me my OSINT was correct, but I needed to think again outside of the box. I've not yet tried my second attempt because I noticed I still had too much to learn. Is there any advice? I'm going over my PNPT courses again, but I don't feel ready to take the exam.
Man, this was a clever person that found this specific webinar, got the man himself to ask that question too. So I will just lob it over to one Mr. Heath Adams. What's your advice to this person, Heath?
Yeah, so this is what the retake is for. And so with our policy, for those who are watching that don't know, is that when you purchase an exam with us, you get a free retake. So the first attempt, you go through it, and as long as you submit a report on any attempt, you get a hint back. So that hint is pretty valuable. It kind of lets you know that you're in the right direction. You just need to look a little bit more outside the box, like you said. The best advice that I can give is that if you've gone through the course material, make sure that you're taking very, very good notes, and make sure you have things to reference to. Everything on the exam is within the course material, though it does require you to keep it simple, stupid, kind of the KISS method, right? So make sure that you're keeping it simple. Like, a lot of people try to approach the exam as a CTF because we're conditioned with all the platforms that are out there that are very CTF heavy, or capture the flag heavy, that we forget that this is meant to be practical. This is meant to be dumb user. This is meant to be dumb admin. And if you think like that, and you think of those kinds of configurations and those settings, it makes it a lot easier. But it's very common to be in the place where you're at. I would say there's two really big sticking points that people get stuck at on the exam, and that's the entry into the environment is number one. So I wouldn't be too hung up over that. It's very common, and just give it another go. You've got, again, 5 more days to go through the exam, and I think given the hint that you had, I think that you should be able to break in and make it pretty decent to the network.
I just want to kind of like throw this out there for you, Heath. When I saw you put this out to market, right? The PNPT became a thing, and then I started looking at it, and more the immediate free retake, right? Like, you can fail your way forward. That you wanted to not, I think you said this, and if I'm misquoting you, let me know, but you didn't want TCM to succeed on your customers' failures. And I thought, that is so right. That is absolutely right, and I love that about that. And number 2, I love that your exam is set up to be not a CTF. Anybody that sits near me will know that I don't really like CTFs, honestly, because I don't want to try to solve a puzzle. I'm not so much that kind of person who wants to sit there and solve like a logic problem, other than I want to learn security techniques that work in the real world. Now, you can do that through CTFs, and I like that aspect of it, but the fact that I've kind of figure my way through some labyrinth of weird custom stuff that you'll never really see in the real world, so that you can hit those, get those flags, that bothers me. So I love that your exam this is an environment. People make mistakes. We have taught you how to look for mistakes and exploit mistakes. Do that, write it up, submit it. We'll see you there. It'll be a lot of fun. When I saw that that's what you were attempting to do, I just was applauding all day long. So thank you so much. It's nice to be able to talk to you in person and say that to you face to face, and say, I think that is the right way for us to continue. And if you ever make a next level PNPT, something better, something bigger, something stronger, faster, I can't wait to see that as well, because I'm sure it'll be awesome, because this, to me, is the right way to go.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. That said, I'm sure we have questions. I know we're running a little low on time, but let's see what we got.
We do. We have a couple of questions that came in having to do with networking. Both Aaron and Rolando had a question. So Rolando said, how important is networking knowledge for an offense-based cybersecurity career? In essence, is CCNA or Net Plus needed?
Well, I feel like we've kind of touched on this a bit already. I think, Heath, you've made it pretty clear that you think at least a Net Plus level of understanding, maybe not down the CCNA road where you got to be iOS, savvy, and Cisco router jockey, switch jockey kind of thing going on. Not that it wouldn't help, right? Would you say that's probably where you're at on this?
Yeah, Net Plus minimum. CCNA is fine. You don't have to go beyond CCNA, like CCNP or whatever is not necessary, as somebody who's done these in the past. So I would honestly say, like, yes, if you're on a network and you don't understand networking, doing network pen testing is going to be very difficult. So understanding, routing tables and different types of architecture, and how how packets go and leave and the network, I think, is very, very important. Understanding subnetting, understanding the lingo, being able to talk the talk, because you're going to have to sit down as part of a pen test job and talk to a network engineer and talk to a web developer and talk to these types of people. And you need to be able to talk shop as well. So you have to be a technical person. You have to be a capable of debriefing technical people and non-technical people. And you have to be capable of writing reports to technical and non-technical people as well. So it's really like a three-headed or three-tiered type job. So networking is incredibly important, critical. If you don't have networking knowledge, you will not succeed as a pen tester. I'm fairly confident.
Yeah, and you've probably experienced this well because you've done some. Obviously you have training available. I've had people ask me things like, okay, I'm using Metasploit. I've created my MSF Venom payload or whatever, and I download it down to my target, and I execute it, and inside my home lab it works fine. I get the reverse shell, I open the session, and everything's gravy. But if I download one for like an Android phone and it's on a cell network, the shell never comes back. Why is that? I'm like, this is basic networking right here. It's because you're building something that's working inside of a local area network, and this is a wide area network, and it has to go through the internet. How does things make it through the internet and get back to here? Let's start talking about things like port forwarding or services that will allow this to occur, to go from one private network to another through a public network. If you don't understand networking and what a public network is and what a private network is, you're probably sitting there going, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna go, over here now. So to me, that's the kind of thing that points out like why understanding operating systems is important. Understanding network, at least in some fundamental way, is extremely important, because if you don't know how these things work, it's cool if you know how to use a hacking tool, but if anything goes wrong or outside of the tutorial or demonstration, you're lost because you don't understand how these things make their connections or how they hook into the operating system or what they're doing under the hood. So it's extremely important to get that kind of foundational knowledge so that when you do bump up into these security tools or doing some sort of security practice, you're able to go, oh yeah, I'm putting the pieces together. That's how all this stuff, oh, I got you. Or I ran into a problem. I had this happen to myself, right? Just last night, I was trying to do a port scan and it was hanging. And I was like, why is this hanging? So I fired up Wireshark and I looked at the packets. I saw how they were like being transmitted and received and going back and forth. And I know what a SYN, ACK, and an ACK is supposed to look like. And that's a TCP three-way handshake. And that wasn't happening. And that was causing my problem. And I could see where the hangup was. If I didn't understand networking, I'd have been like, I guess this doesn't work, and had to move along down the road or do a lot of Google searching. So that's why I think we always like to say networking, fundamental. You got to know how to do at least that Net Plus level to really be able to be effective.
Yeah, and we had a client recently that they said, hey, we want you to test for segmentation in our network. Make sure you can't access our administrative network. And we said, okay. We're like, you got VLAN set up, right? Yeah, totally. Got VLAN set up. We're good to go. Okay, so we ping check, did some scans, nothing came back. We're like, let's just add a route and see what happens. Did a route add? Bing, right there. Access to the entire admin network. So even network administration people can misconfigure it. So being able to understand like just the basic concepts of how to route to certain places could be the difference of saying, yeah, you're segmented, you're great, or no, you actually aren't segmented, you misconfigured this, so here, go fix this. So again, it's going back to doing what's right for your client as well.
That's right. Great advice, great advice. What you want to do, because if you'd have just done a ping scan and said, no, yeah, you're right, I can't access any of these things, and you didn't have that little bit deeper knowledge, which is just beyond that, honestly. That's not too far removed from being able to understand ping.
It's scratching the surface.
Right, you're just scratching the surface, and you were able to go, well, if you're doing a PCI compliance test, then you have failed. And we have a problem, right? So, great question. So let's move on. I'm sure you got more. Sophia, what do we got?
Yes, this one, I think this is a good one, even outside of cybersecurity.
I'm going to let you answer it then.
Oh, well, I didn't say I had the knowledge for it. Do I look like I know anything?
I'm just kidding.
It says, how do you deal with interview burnout? I keep getting approached by recruiters, but after the first few steps, they say I don't have enough experience.
Man, that kind of sucks.
It's rough.
That's a kick in the guts to hear you don't have enough experience. But Heath, would you say that a recruiter is nice, but they're not the only game in town, right?
Yeah, and they're, with the exception of a few good recruiters, most of them don't have you in interest. They're just mass spraying out, as many connection requests and emails that they can to just see who's going to respond back. And if you don't know how recruiting works, they get like 25 to 30% of salary, and they're just looking for somebody to get a nice big payday. So the better your resume is, the better salary that you can get, and the more money they can get at the end of the day. So what you really need to be doing is you need to focus on your resume and what skills are on it. Have somebody review your resume, or there's plenty of places to do it. There's online services. There's plenty of people who do it for free if you ask nicely. So like, have your resume reviewed, make sure it's up to date and it looks good, then start submitting that. Now, if you're not getting any callbacks to the jobs that you're submitting for, either your resume is not good enough or you don't have the skills required. And then you start breaking this down into sections as to where am I failing. So if you start moving into the interview process and you're not doing well enough there, well, then okay, I'm getting XYZ questions wrong. I probably need to go study those areas, go back, do that, and then start applying again. So it's kind of a get beat up in the submitting my resume, get no callbacks phase, get beat up in the beginning interview phase, and then just keep going on and persevering until you do get a job. It takes a lot of applications usually, and a lot of interviews usually to get a job offer. So I would say recruiters aren't really the way to go. Again, there are some decent ones out there, some good ones out there, but most of them don't have your best interest in mind.
I'm going to have to agree with you there, Heath. Unfortunately, that is kind of the name of the game. So start throwing those resumes out there, make sure they're nice and polished so that when they do hit on the hiring manager's desk, they're like, this looks like an interesting candidate, and get that interview. So we're hoping that works out for you. But unfortunately, we have run out of time. So all those people out there that did not get a chance to get their question answered, we hope to see you on the next one. Heath, it's been a good time, man. I've had a great time hanging out with you. Loved your answers, loved talking with you. I look forward to hopefully doing this again in the future if we ever get the time for that. But that said, looks like we are going to give it over to Sophie and send us on our way. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for joining us, Heath.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
I do have something to give away.
Oh, you do?
I do. Shocker, right?
Shocker.
It's not like I gave you a little hint about that at the beginning of the show. But before we do that, before we give away the IT Pro TV swag, I do want to let everyone know you can check out a free IT Pro TV membership, no credit card required, with access to select courses and our daily live feed. You can also get a full personal membership, and that's going to provide complete access to all the IT Pro TV courses with or without practice exams and virtual labs. Now, if you're on a team, you're probably going to want to check out the business page, which offers a tour of the Pro Portal used to maximize your team's investment in training. And if you do sign up for a personal membership, Daniel, generous man that he is going to give you 30% off. All you have to do is enter the promo code Daniel30. So thank you for that, Daniel. And now for the winner. The winner of the IT Pro TV swag is Nathan L. So congratulations, Nathan. Thank you all for joining us. That's it for today. For Daniel Lowrie, I'm Sophie Goodwin, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. You will receive a link to the recording of the webinar delivered to your inbox. Remember, the coupon code is webinar30. See you back here for the next IT Pro TV webinar.